Today, I want to talk about the story of the Good Samaritan. I am sure you have heard it a gazillion times over the course of Sunday school and church life. It could easily be titled The Good Neighbor, and it's from Luke 10, verses 25 through 37. And the gist of the story is a lawyer who was trying to trip up Jesus by getting him to say the wrong thing to expose him as a fraud so people would stop following Jesus. This lawyer asked Jesus a question. Simple enough. What do I need to do to inherit eternal life? Now, most people would get into this huge theological debate, arguing the finer points of law, and then offering their answer. But, no, not Jesus. Jesus turns the question back onto the lawyer and asks, well, what do you think? Smart move, right? Have you ever had a teacher do this to you? And so the lawyer answers from the Shema, which is something that the Jews have recited from Deuteronomy for a long time, and then Leviticus 19:18. So Deuteronomy 6:5 and Leviticus 19:18. Love the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus told the lawyer, great job, you got it right. But the lawyer wasn't so satisfied with that because he didn't want that to be the end. He wanted to just justify what he had said. So he asked Jesus, well, who is my neighbor? Which I thought was a little cheeky. I mean, it's pretty obvious because Leviticus 19:18 actually says, do not seek revenge. Love your neighbor as yourself. So the lawyer knew what my neighbor meant, or who my neighbor would be. But instead, Jesus says, great, listen to this story. And I'm sure, like I said before, you've heard it before. So there's this guy walking along the Jericho Road, which is a really dangerous, twisty, windy road up to Jerusalem. And he encountered some robbers, and they beat the crap out of him and left him for dead. And so he's lying in a ditch on the side of the road, and a rabbi and a teacher, in separate incidents, encountered him, freaked out, crossed to the other side of the road, and kept on keeping on. Left him for dead, because they didn't want to defile themselves, so they wouldn't be able to worship at the temple. Now, as a side note, Jewish law allowed for you to help, clergy specifically, allowed for them to help somebody that was in trouble. So they could have justified themselves without having to go through all the ritual cleansing. But they just kept on keeping on. The Samaritan, on the other hand, saw what was going on, stopped, and gave this guy aid. Now understand, the Jews hated the Samaritans. They hated them. They were considered religious half-breeds. They didn't worship God right. Jews wanted nothing to do with the Samaritans, and the feeling was really likewise. They just did not get along. So a Samaritan helping a Jew on the side of the road is pretty incredible. So the Samaritan bandaged up this guy, threw him on his donkey, carried him to the inn that was closest. It'd be like taking him to the hospital or a place to rest. Got a room, bandaged the guy up more, paid the innkeeper for several nights' stay, and said, help this guy, and if you spend more money than I've left, I'll come back and I'll reimburse you. Pretty incredible, right? I mean, who does that? No one does that. No one does that. Now, talking about the Samaritans, and a good example of what this would look like in real life is if a Republican was in a ditch, badly injured, and a Democrat pulled up and was like, and kept on keeping on, because they weren't going to help that Republican. Or vice versa. It's a Democrat in the ditch, and a Republican's not going to help them. Because you know how much animosity is happening between those two groups right now, right? So that's just kind of the best way to kind of get that feeling of, no, we are not going to help them. Basically, Jesus was telling the lawyer that the Jews' enemy, the Samaritans, was the one who will inherit eternal life in God's economy. Because that's who loved or helped their neighbor. Now that's a twist to a story, isn't it? And what's really critical here is you need to understand Jesus wasn't only asking or telling who our neighbor is, but also how we are to be a neighbor, how we are to be a good neighbor to the people around us. He's showing the lawyer, and as a result us, what really is at the core of the greatest commandments. Loving God with all of our being, with all of who we are, and loving our neighbors exactly how we would want to be loved. Now, this parable isn't something that we're just supposed to think on. This parable is designed to help us know how to act. Action should come out of this parable for us. Again, it not only shows us who our neighbor is, but how we're supposed to be with that neighbor, whether they're friends or enemies. As I keep talking about this, all I can hear is the State Farm jingle, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, in my head. That's all I can hear. But that's a great big truth packed into that jingle. Because State Farm's an insurance company, and they're supposed to be there when you need the most help, right? Like a good neighbor would be. That jingle was taken from this parable, believe it or not. But it's true. If we want our insurance companies to help us, how much more is Jesus saying, I want you to help others? Even if they're not deserving, even if you can't stand them, even if they're mean to you, you're supposed to help them. So I want to leave you with this. Who is your neighbor? And throughout the coming week, I want you to notice the people around you. Because your neighbors aren't only the people that live next door to you or behind you. Your neighbors are everyone that you encounter during your day, in person and online. Who do you interact with? Something to think about, isn't it? I call it our sphere of influence. Who are the people around us on every day? Could be your neighbor, could be school friends, could be your teachers, could be some guy you're arguing with online. It could be the lady that gives you your food. It could be the server that brings you your water. It could be the guy at the gas station. I mean, it's anybody that you encounter is your neighbor. So who is it that you would help in a heartbeat? And who is it that you would have trouble helping out of those neighbors that you encounter? Now, importantly, this does not mean that you have to be best buds with this person if you help them. And if helping them puts you in a dangerous position, you need to ask somebody else to help them, because you never want to put yourself in a bad position. If they've been have bullied you or been really mean to you or could use that as a position of power, you don't want to do that. Ask another adult to help you, okay? But it doesn't mean you have to be best buds. And when you help someone, you should be helping without any expectation of something being done in return. This is a no strings attached kind of thing. So this week, ask God, who is my neighbor? And ask that your eyes are opened so that you can see. I pray that your eyes and your hearts will be opened to how big God's kingdom is. We'll see you next week.